Hi, Caroline from Scottish Agritourism. Okay, Josh, shall we just start?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our first Traveltech for Scotland event. My name's Leslie Judge. I'm the project manager for Traveltech for Scotland. And I've got with me Josh Ryan Saha, who is the director for Traveltech for Scotland, and three members of our Traveltech community who are going to be talking to us as well. Julie Grieve, CEO and founder of Criton, Allan Nelson, CEO and co-founder of Foresight, and Iain McNeill, Managing Director of Whereverly. I'm just reminding you that the event is being recorded so that people can watch it afterwards. A little bit about me. So if you don't know me from the tourism sector, that's my background. I've been working in the tourism sector for a long time. Very much industry engagement, working on public and private sector projects with destination organisations such as Edinburgh Tourism Action Group, Visit Aberdeenshire, Love Loch Lomond, with the Association of Scottish Visitor Attractions, Destination Leaders Programme, and working with tourism SMEs to develop their digital and data capabilities, which is how I ended up working with Josh. So through Edinburgh Innovations, I also work with Interface, which helps connect businesses with academic expertise across all sectors. But I work with the tourism sector there, which could be useful for some of you. I'm a chapter leader for the global travel network Travel Massive. And with a couple of my colleagues, we've grown the Edinburgh chapter to 700 members, which we launched in 2015. And I also sit on the board of Women in Tourism, which is active across the sector too. And today we're really delighted to welcome guests from all over Scotland, from Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Sweden, the Maldives, and the US. We're delighted that Traveltech is uniting us across the globe, which is really fitting with our ambition and our vision, which Josh is going to share with us shortly. And we've got, as I say, a really good mix of travel tech and tourism businesses. So please use the chat box to introduce yourself, say where you're from, so that we can get a good idea of who everyone is. Our schedule today is just over an hour. Josh will share more on our new community and how you can get involved. And then we'll hear from our three guest speakers. We'll move on to a Q&A, and you'll have the opportunity to put your questions, give your suggestions, and help us shape the community, which we're really looking forward to. So without anything further, I think, thank you again for taking the time to join us today. And I'll pass over to my colleague, Joshua Ryan Saha.
Thanks very much, Leslie. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. So Leslie, can you just confirm that you can see that? Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you saw all the exciting news last week about the launch of Traveltech for Scotland. And what we're going to talk about right at the start is what Traveltech for Scotland is, what we're hoping to achieve, how you can potentially get involved, and also then go into the most important part, hearing from Julie, Allan and Iain about what they want to see from a Traveltech community. So I'll make a start now. Who am I? Now, there's many friendly faces in the audience already, so a lot of you know who I am. I work at the University of Edinburgh and an organisation as part of it called Edinburgh Innovations. I'm the data-driven innovation lead for tourism, festivals and infrastructure. So we're looking at setting up data projects. And in that role, we've been able to set up Traveltech for Scotland. My background is I worked at the Data Lab, one of the innovation centres here in Scotland, where I led on data skills. Before that, I worked at an organisation called Nesta, where I set up something called the Longitude Prize, which is a big innovation competition. And then following that, before that, I worked in Bosnia and Herzegovina as international development. So a bit of a weird background, but absolutely delighted to be working on this initiative. So what is Traveltech for Scotland? Now, some of you may know or have seen FinTech Scotland, which came up about 3 years ago. And it's been a really successful cluster initiative. And by cluster, what it is essentially is a community of organisations, companies that have the same or roughly similar sort of purposes, trying to grow in Scotland. And we think, for many reasons, that Scotland's a good place for a travel tech cluster. So we're sort of following the footsteps of FinTech Scotland. And our ambition is for Scotland to be able to host a travel tech hub, a successful travel tech hub that is competing with the likes of Amsterdam, Berlin, and Barcelona. And we think we have all the right components to do that. The project is being funded by Scottish Enterprise and the European Commission, and it is hosted by the University of Edinburgh. It has a Futures Institute that's formed a couple of years ago, and we are employed, myself and Leslie, by the University of Edinburgh to deliver this. So what are we defining as travel tech? It's one of those terms that can probably be defined in many ways. And in fact, in the sort of research phase of this project, we did define it in many ways. But this seems to be the one that, I don't know, resonates most with me. So when we think about travel tech, we're thinking about the customer journey a visitor or a tourist might take, right from dreaming to planning to booking to experiencing and then sharing. And that can be directly to the customer, directly to the visitor, or from business to business. And every bit along that includes digital or data-driven technologies is what we think of as travel tech. What it probably isn't, and this is one of the questions that has come up a few times, is it's not going to be transport tech. It may be transport where it's in relation to tourism and travel, but not just transport. It's got to be something around tourism and the travel industry. So why is Scotland the best place for a travel tech cluster? Well, when me and Leslie pitched this, we kind of said that it is already. There's so many of you that are already doing some wonderful things in travel tech, and it's got every single component that you would want for a successful ecosystem around travel tech. First of all, and obviously, there's Skyscanner, which is Scotland's only unicorn tech company. And there's a lot of experts in travel technology just in Scotland's technology community. And that technology community is growing all the time. We have code base across 3 different cities. There's a huge number of companies forming in technology in Scotland. We know that we have world-class universities, certainly not just the University of Edinburgh, Strathclyde, we have Stirling, we have Inverness, and the University of Highlands and Islands. All of these universities are doing wonderful research, and AI, data science, are particular areas of comparative advantage for Scotland. And of course, it's one of the world's most popular destinations, one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but people are coming here. So it's the perfect test bed for travel technology as well. So what is the purpose of this cluster? Well, we want to see the travel tech community grow. We want to see it flourish. We want to see it more companies started. We want to see the companies like many of you in this virtual room right now being able to hire more people, to get into new markets. We want it also, and crucially, to support Scotland. That's why it's called Travel Tech for Scotland, not just Travel Tech Scotland. And we think it can both help the tourism industry, but also lead the way to a more sustainable and responsible tourism future. But of course, the moment right now that we're in requires a very different response to what we'd anticipated when we started this. It's been the biggest crisis for travel in the modern era. And I think what we really want to do is to be able to use the power and the expertise of travel tech pioneers in Scotland and help the tourism industry here in Scotland restart, reopen, and hopefully recover. So that's what our purpose is. We've got a 3-year ambition. The project is funded for 3 years. We'd hope, if it's needed, that it can continue on afterwards. But right now, our focus and our purpose is on the needs of recovery. So who is it for? First of all, it is for travel tech companies in Scotland. We want to help these travel tech companies grow, as I've already talked about. but there's also many tech companies or many companies that haven't even yet formed that this is for, and where they could pivot or start or do new things to support technology in tourism and travel. But it's also for tourism and hospitality companies. They have many problems right now. Some of those could be part solved by Traveltech, and we want to be able to match the Traveltech providers with the tourism and hospitality companies, help them use the technology so that they can recover and become more successful. And it's also for the international community. We want to be able to showcase Traveltech in Scotland to international markets. We also want to attract international travel tech companies to either invest or start here. And we think there's 5 different ways that we want to start work. Now, part of the purpose of this event today is to get your ideas into the mix as well. But the first is a community. We want to form a community of travel tech companies and tourism and hospitality companies, event tech companies, so that you can share openly and communicate around new ideas, or where there may be blockages, or just learning from each other. And we want to do that potentially through a community platform where people will be able to have that relationship, and we can signpost to new opportunities. The second part is marketplace. We want to be able to help travel tech companies find a marketplace of domestic and international companies, but also help those tourism and hospitality companies find the travel tech solutions. At the moment, we're working with some great colleagues, Karen Gidland, who I think is actually on the call, who are developing a directory around travel tech companies in Scotland, and we want you to be part of that. We want to share market intelligence, so not just what the state of the sector is, although that's important, where the potential investment lies, but also the opportunities that are out there for travel tech companies. We want to help innovate, we want to help you access innovation funding, but the final part here is building reputation, a reputation for the sector, the travel tech sector in Scotland. We've seen it being done in Israel, we've seen it being done in Paris, and we think that Scotland has, if not more, of the constituent parts to make Scotland the key travel tech hub. One of the beautiful things about working in a university is that there's always an expert who's researched the thing that you're trying to do. So I did that. I spoke to Professor Ben Spiegel at the University of Edinburgh. I said, he's an expert in entrepreneurial ecosystems. And I asked him, what makes a good cluster? And there's a few things that he said. The first thing is it needs to be led by the community. So me and Leslie here to support you. We're not here to lead it. We want this to be led by the travel tech companies and the tourism companies in Scotland. And that's the way to make it a successful cluster. The second is our role is in a way to do a bit of the boring stuff. We want to make it easy for you to succeed and to connect you to the right people, find the right funds, all of that sort of stuff, and make it so that those barriers and blockages are much easier to navigate. And our focus, and we'll need a focus, should be on the collective problems that the sector has. The other and final thing is that it only works if we're open, transparent, and we talk to each other. So it's not just about me and Leslie talking to you, but you talking to each other, sharing ideas and collaborating. And I know, for example, that Julie and Allan, who are going to speak later on, have been leaders in the way in that sort of collaboration. So how are we going to work? Already mentioned a focus on sustainable and responsible tourism. It's not just a buzzword, it's something we'll need and should live by. We want our events that we run like this to have a clear purpose, to be action orientated, not talking shops. We don't want to work alone. We will try and do things through partners as much as possible, and have an international perspective. So one of the things I'm going to do just after I've finished talking is post a link to a mural board, which is basically a big canvas that you can put your ideas. So what we would like is for you to just put your ideas, post them onto that canvas, your response to what we've talked about as you're hearing all these talks. It's a bit of an experiment, it might not work, so don't worry. If you do have ideas, just pop it in an email down to me and Leslie. So I'm going to stop here, and Leslie, do you want to take over and introduce our first speaker?
Yes, thank you, Josh. I'm really delighted to welcome Julie Grieve, who is the CEO and founder of Criton, and she's the first of our 3 speakers today. So welcome, Julie.
very much, Leslie, and thank you very much, both of you, for inviting me to talk today. I'll just start by saying I'm really excited about this. When Leslie and Josh started talking to me about it, you could see the potential for it, but I think the main takeaway is that it's in all of our hands. And Leslie's right, Allan and I have spent several years bemoaning the lack of support from Scottish Government on an exciting and growing sector, and so it's great to actually be at the beginning of it all. For those of you who don't know me, I started Criton 3.5 years ago. The idea for Criton came to me when I was setting up and running a luxury service department business. So Criton's a guest engagement and integrations platform, and what we do is we help hotels bring together all of their different guest-facing technologies, and we put it all in one place, which is a native app, and we let them present it to their guests. So that's for two reasons. The first thing is that the landscape, the technology landscape for hotels is very hard for the independent hotelier. They have lots of different systems, some of them legacy, some of them new, some of them cloud-based. And if they don't put it all in one place, guests don't use that technology. And that means they don't get return on investment. But the second part of it is that from a guest perspective, you can see fundamentally that the drive to digital, for reasons of everybody has their phone, they're used to it when they go on a plane. You know, Iain's going to talk about they're used to it now as part of their experience, and then they get to a hotel and they have to stand in a queue to collect a bit of plastic to let them get into the room. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to really help hotels embrace digital transformation, and not only, as I say, give their guests what they want, but it does reduce their impact on the environment. And what we find, of course, with COVID is that all of a sudden we've gone from dealing with early adopters who really wanted to embrace technology as a differentiator to hoteliers now saying, right, how do I go about offering a contactless guest journey? And how do I make sure that it's affordable and sustainable, and actually it's something that I can embed into my guest journey? Because, as I'd say to them, digital is now fundamentally part of the guest journey. It's not a different guest journey. So Leslie and Josh asked me to say what my thoughts were on the community. I started a little bit with it, but for me, when they asked me what I was looking for from it, I think it's about sharing of experiences. The best way to learn when you're in business, starting a business, is to hear what others have gone through. As we all know, tourism and travel and hotels have a lot of foibles. The technology landscape isn't sometimes very easy to get your head around, and that whole experience of how you get into some hotels, how you start with your technology, whether it's a B2C technology or a B2B technology, and learn from it. I don't believe you can necessarily learn from others' mistakes, but you can certainly hear their experience and try and build it into your plans. And I think, you know, I started Criton in Codebase, and that was one of the things that I have found fundamentally made a difference to me as a non-technical founder, was that I had access to speak to people who'd been and are technical founders, and also not technical founders, and what they had done. So access to that ecosystem of people who've started technology businesses, I would say, you know, hands down, has been one of the most useful things in my inverted commas journey of Criton. Obviously, Skyscanner, they have, obviously, like all of us, have their troubles right now, but they've been very giving back to the community in terms of sharing legal experiences, you know, getting their people out into the community to try and help, and that into a community, I think will be super helpful, in standardizing it, not just in Codebase and technology businesses, but in travel tech businesses, I think will be fantastic. The most important thing for me is the ambition to actually have focus from government on the fact that little Scotland have global ambitions. You know, I started Criton because I wanted to grow a global business, and to be able to say to people in Scotland, we have this cluster where we're all, or not all of us, not everybody wants to grow a global business, but some of us are really focused on that global landscape because it's technology and we can really scale it. And that takes money. You don't, unfortunately, grow a global business unless you've got a money tree. And if you have one, can I have a cutting, please? Because I don't have one, and I could do with one, let me tell you. So, you know, the acknowledgement and the experience of growing a global business, the time it takes, the funding it takes, and the acceptance that will take, both of those, I think, will help really everybody in the industry understand what we're all trying to achieve and why it's hard, and support each other. I think it's really interesting that you see Mark Logan's launched his report for the government on the Scottish tech ecosystem, the review he's done for the government, and there's definitely lessons we can learn in there and bring into this cluster, but mostly I'm just looking forward to getting to know everybody that I don't know yet, and hopefully being open and honest and helping each other. So I'm going to finish with a little bit of news. Leslie asked me to share if I had any news on Criton. We've just recently launched some research. So we do research once a year, and it's guest-facing research. You know, we spend as much time looking at what guests want as what hoteliers want. And we did our research as normal in January this year, and it was unsurprisingly very strong that guests wanted to use digital in hotels, but we thought it would be useful to rerun it given we've had a global pandemic. And I'm happy to share well, in fact, you can just go onto my LinkedIn or Twitter and you'll see the report there, but fundamentally, there's even more growth in demand for digital from guests. So we've seen key statistic in March, 73% of people said they would download an app for a hotel to check in and use digital key. That's now 80%. So 4 in 5 people are looking for a digital experience. Now, you could say that that's to do with contactless and guests looking for a different sort of experience, but I have to say, I think the demand was there already. And I think that what we're seeing is global pandemic speeding up digital adoption. And so anybody who's looking at a market and thinking, is there an opportunity here in terms of what guests are looking for, but also in how technology can underpin it, will only see a market that has a need. It's very fragmented and also has a demand. So our research is overwhelmingly positive about the fact that it's what guests want. Again, you won't be surprised about that, I get that, but it is actually, you know, 5,500 people in January and nearly 3,000 people in March, and we didn't pay them, and Brendan can attest to that because we used his list to ask them. So that's been exciting. And just to finish off with, you know, COVID for us was obviously scary to begin with, as we considered how we would continue our business when hotels were closed and they didn't have any guests. But actually we have embraced what we can offer, which is to begin with a digital guest book, and we offered that product for free to hotels to the end of the year, and we've 2.5 times our number of customers, and we've 3 times our locations. So it's been a good learning in how we can get apps out the door in anger, as I say. So lots of people banging on the door desperate for their app, and we're seeing phenomenal engagement both from hotels but from guests in terms of not just downloads, which of course, as most of us will know, is a vanity metric, but actually dwell time in the app and what they're interested in. And I'll finish with saying, I think I've said that 3 times now, sorry, I really am going to finish with saying the most looked at page in every hotel app I know is food. People want to know what they're going to eat. so technology that helps people understand what they're going to eat and order it is definitely going to be a success. I'm just under my 10 minutes, but I will finish there just with a big thumbs up to Leslie and Joshua for getting us off the ground, and to all the various bodies that are sponsoring it, because I do genuinely think we have something here and I'm very excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you for being very generous. And I think that's one of the most important things, is the sharing aspect for the community and the learning aspect. It was really good to hear what you had to say. Thank you. So, and also if you've got any questions for Julie, guys, please just put them in the chat box. I can see that you're sharing bits and pieces, which is great. And so now I would love to welcome our second speaker, Allan Nelson, who is CEO and co-founder of Foresight. So welcome, Allan.
Hello, thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Julie, as always. So to give you a bit of background about us, about myself, despite the accent, I've been living in Scotland since 1993. I was one of the many, many Northern Irish that exited the province quite quickly around that time, and then came to university in Scotland. I moved down to Edinburgh in '98, and I joined Forth, which is actually Foresight's parent company. Long story, but I bought into the company fairly shortly after, and we've been through the startup experience, several times in different areas. We're a company at our core that handles customer contact, transactional data. We do it securely, we do it at scale. We provide, on the hotel side, we provide the technology, the tools and the services for the hotel marketer to get the best from that data, to try and maximize the guest experience, but also, obviously increase revenue. And as Julie has alluded to, it is not necessarily the easiest thing to do from a technology perspective. But ultimately our vision is to give the guests a really cool, really relevant, seamless experience involving all the comms that are needed around their stays, and indeed that longer term relationship. And that sounds very similar to what Julie's just said. However, in our case, we are much more interested in being the kind of background engine and brain for that. And our job really is to help the likes of Julie and those mobile channels, email channels, and so on, get the messaging right, say the right thing to the right person at the right time. We've actually been doing this for quite a long time. I think we're probably the longest established of the three on the call here. We founded the product actually in 2008 after a phone call from a very, very famous Scottish 5-star resort. Basically, can you guys come in and sort out our data because it's rubbish? We want to use it. We want to talk to our guests like a concierge would, but we really have to get this sorted out. So we came in and did that as an agency gig, and then we saw an opportunity in the market. That opportunity kind of grew with the direct bookings, online travel agents, desire to upsell, desire for guest relationship, that anybody in this sector knows what an interesting challenge the online travel opportunity and challenge that the OTAs provide to the hotels. And as a result of this experience, we took it around a series of early adopters in Scotland who bought into the concept, helped us get it off the ground, told us what we were doing wrong, told us what we were doing right, and we gradually scaled it over the last decade. And we're headquartered in Edinburgh. Most of our, a lot of our team are based over here. We also have a team, coincidentally, we have a team in an office in Northern Ireland, which suits us for various reasons to work across both sites, but very much a Scottish focus. So over the years, we've gradually scaled into mainly UK and Irish clients. However, we've now hit that point that we really, really want to scale. However, we do have global recognition. We do have global reputation. We are very, very high in our category on Hotel Tech Report, for example. Basically, we have a great bunch of long-term clients. We have a great bunch of new clients, and we like to think that we do a pretty good job for them, because if we didn't, they wouldn't be paying us. And all of that from a standing start, and all of that to date hasn't actually been self-funded within the business, which is an experience in itself. So in terms of the actual landscape itself, well, obviously we have a deep understanding of the landscape. Julie's already alluded to a lot of the issues and challenges that come with the hotel tech landscape. And the point I suppose I'm trying to make is that we have a lot of that experience already in Scotland. We understand how the technology fits together, what's good, what's bad, what's new, who's easy to work with, who's difficult, who's going places, who's not, who plays well together and who doesn't. And that is a massive challenge for the hotelier, because the hoteliers traditionally have tended to be more, they're tended to be more focused on the guest experience, on the color of carpet, on what they put into the bar and everything else. And technology was always something that kind of sat over in a corner that they often didn't really understand, but they had to, they would bring some techie people in to deal with that. However, obviously as time has gone on, technology has become more and more central to how hotels operate, to the extent that it's now being built into the core of hotels being built and hotel installations and so on. So, and we are seeing a lot of vendors changing from a fairly closed attitude to an open attitude as well. A lot of cloud platforms, open APIs and so on. You know, and a lot of these vendors have realized they can't do everything. There's opportunities for startups to come in and do a particular part of the technology, hotel technology experience very, very well, and go into partnership with some of these much larger players. And certainly we're seeing that, and I know Julie is as well. So in terms of what, you know, this whole experience has got me thinking about what is the opportunity in Scotland. Well, we have the experience here. We have a lot of the key relationships in the market. We have a reputation in the market. And where is the guest experience going? You know, in my mind, one of the avenues is an airline-style evolution of the guest experience. You know, we're customized to stay by sea view, by room, by whatever's in your room, wherever you want brought to your room, wherever you want to go. And a lot of that requires, you know, some pretty hardcore technology at the back end of it. A lot of it's not there yet. And in my opinion, a lot of the kind of legacy vendors would struggle to ever do that. I'm quite sure Julie would say the same thing. And when we get that tech in place, how does it affect the guest communication? How does it affect the guest profiling? What does it tell us about the guest? And then from that as well, there's looking at what the post-COVID situation looks like. I think we started these discussions obviously before COVID hit, and you know, that's obviously, you know, it's taken a lot out of the market. It affected us in terms of revenue, affected every vendor in the space. Thank goodness, you know, from our point of view, we're not a commission model, we're a monthly SaaS model. So if for any of you out there who are thinking about setting up and going down the commission route, you know, have a good long think about that. You know, people are working from home now as well. So in our case, you know, our office in Hanover Street, you know, we've served notice on the lease on it. So therefore, we're going to have to look for a different arrangement from middle of next year. So where do we want to meet up? Probably a nice place with screens and a high-speed internet and a bar and everything else. It's probably going to be a hotel. So we're going to see hotels, you know, repurposing a lot of their co-working spaces, and we are going to see at some point the re-emergence of the conference and event business, which I think is going to be absolutely colossal when it comes back, when we're all allowed to, you know, to go out, and when we all feel that it's safe. So when that is, we're all not quite sure, but I think it's going to be absolutely huge, because I think people are going to want to get all their business done, you know, at these type of events where they can do lots of things in a short space of time. So in terms of what Scotland has done for us, we wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for a series of forward-thinking and very patient hotels who were prepared to invest in us. This product and what we do is very much made in Scotland. You know, and I want to give something back. I want us to give something back, and I want us to become part of a broader community. It always has been in my mind in Scotland. You know, the Traveltech, Skyscanner. So, you know, I think when we actually started having these conversations with Leslie and Josh and Julie and so on, it was not just Skyscanner. It was almost the original, you know, the initial tagline to it. Even though they have done some wonderful, brilliant things, and because of what they've done and because of them, they had to look at Silicon Valley to get the inspiration for how they would do it. We can obviously do that now because of what they've done in Scotland. You know, Skyscanner, FanDuel, Free Agent, Administrate, all these various others whose names escape me at the moment. So we have this ecosystem here. We have a great tech ecosystem. We have a lot of great backing. You know, of entrepreneurs involved like Sir Tom Hunter, Chris van der Kyle, and various others as well. And you know, what I want from Traveltech Scotland is a larger group of like-minded people to really push this forward, to tell our collective stories, to tell the world that we live in this wonderful country, which, you know, which looks fantastic, which is extremely hospitable, which is very welcoming, and we want to say, look, you know, why I keep asking myself in the industry, why do I continually compete with American companies? Why can't we do this in the UK? Why can't we do this in Scotland? Why can't we do this in Europe? Why should the Americans just come over and push their tech? Which a lot of the tech's great. We can learn from that, absolutely. But in my mind, we can definitely do this here, as you know, Skyscanner have proved. Great talent, great universities, and so on. And you know, the importance of tourism to the Scottish economy cannot be underestimated. And if anyone did underestimate it, if anyone thought that over-tourism has been a challenge, and a lot of people complain about it, but the reality being is that Scotland needs a very vibrant, active tourist industry, and therefore a lot of the technology that supports that could and should be homegrown. And ultimately, the impact on tourism affects all of us, so it's up to all of us to work out how to get out of it. So, it's up to all of us to work out how to get out of it. In terms of our news, you know, we've been doing this for quite some time. We know we have product market fit. We know our industry. it's time for us to really scale now with the opportunities that we've got. We're pushing out now, we're taking the product globally. We've just signed our first client in Australia. We've just done a partnership deal with another vendor in South Africa called Guest Review. We will be doing a number of these partnerships as time goes on in different territories. We will obviously continue to invest under our own steam with our own revenue streams. However, we happy to say publicly that we've just been awarded a very large R&D innovation grant from Scottish Enterprise. So that's been signed, and we'll go public on that properly shortly. But it's allowed us to, very strangely in this current circumstance, to actually start hiring. So we've been hiring. We're currently hiring developers and analysts at the moment. So which is a very, very interesting time to go to market. There's certainly a lot of activity on the employee side, which is interesting. So with that R&D as well, we'll be working with, we'll tap into the universities, obviously other contacts in Scotland, and very much like-minded partners like Criton. We've already done some initial work with Julie and the team to see how we can, how we can shape, how our data and the learnings we can get there can really shape the guest journey through Criton's app. And we're really looking for more partners to do great stuff with. So, and ultimately, it's about, in my mind, it's about giving back to the community. It's giving back to the country and really learning, telling everyone what we've learned, but also bringing through the next generation of talent, of entrepreneurs, of Traveltech entrepreneurs. And if there's anything we can do to help them, do that, then please just ask.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Loved your points about giving back to the community and telling collective stories. If there are any hotels with us, then they might want to talk to Alan about some office space. Thank you so much, Alan. So we're moving to our third and final speaker now, and we're delighted to introduce Iain McNeill, who's the Managing Director of Whereverly. So over to you, Iain.
Thank you, Leslie. Everyone, I'm delighted to be here today. It's a bit of a wet day, but I think it's a very big day for Scotland and travel technology. We're a travel tech company based in Edinburgh. We started our life at Traveltech, which is the Scottish Government's digital accelerator. We provide a software platform to DMOs and heritage groups, which delivers content through apps and websites. We simply want tourists who come to Scotland, but also other places too, to really connect to the local places, communities and cultures, and to have the most memorable trips possible. Our whole sort of ethos is we want tourists to feel really good about themselves, go to local places and find the hidden gems and not go back home and realise they've missed something really cool when they visited. We want tourists to to have the technology to leave the beaten track. We want them to feel, and I think it's quite important to feel confident in themselves to leave the beaten track because they know what's off the beaten track. So all of the content we provide comes from local communities. So we work with the local businesses and the tourism groups to get the content. We get the local stories, songs, all the cultural content from the amazing people that, are guides in Scotland, they're cultural creators, they're storytellers, they're heritage professionals. We provide our platform now to a growing number. So we've been going for, I think, over 3 years now since we were in Traveltech and Codebase. So our platform's on North Coast 500, Scotland starts here, the Coig, Stirling, Falkirk, and from the Highlands from Perth to Inverness. I feel really honoured to have been asked to speak today. To me, it's such a good idea. We've got a truly unquestionable world-leading travel product. The travel ecosystem is incredibly strong in Scotland. There's lots of amazing, dedicated people who work across the whole ecosystem. If there's one technology sector Scotland could lead the world in, it has to be travel tech. More than any other, I think it's got the best chances of happening. If I look at the evolution of our business and product, it's been driven, and quite at certain points it has been very driven by the DMOs and the travel industry themselves. So I think it would be, if it'd be ace if you know, Traveltech for Scotland could be the place where technologists come together with the wider travel community to you know, make stuff to solve some of the big problems. You know, it would be amazing if Traveltech for Scotland could be this solid bridge between academia and the travel industry. And I'm sure people know how to make that bridge or do that jump, but for a lot of people it's quite a new thing. So I think to create that solid bridge would be amazing. You know, it would help if it could simplify, you know, innovation funding and, you know, the necessary brokering of partnerships with academic institutions, which might not be apparent from unless you've done it before. So, you know, the fact is that, you know, Edinburgh University is involved. It should make these things possible. I think it would be amazing if Traveltech could become the platform, you know, for technology products to reach the wider world. You know, that seal of approval that, you know, going abroad, maybe not on your own, but as a collective, could be a powerful thing in my opinion. And I'm sure that a lot of the problems faced and addressed through technology in Scotland, there'll be wider global problems. I think there is that international opportunity. We hope that Traveltech Scotland becomes a human thing, and I think, you know, that's come through, you know, speaking to Julie and Allan, that, you know, it's an open and inclusive community of mutual support, you know, where value creating relationships can be formed. We've seen a trend we've seen different trends accelerating during the pandemic, and it'd be great if Traveltech Scotland could become a place to discuss and debate the trends, whether it's, you know, over tourism, green tourism, eco-tourism, and actually start forming solutions. I think it would be amazing if it could be, you know, a place where positive movements could come, and then they could try and see how tech could solve these or help their causes. So, you know, the one sort of that springs to mind is the slow tourism movement from which was I think an amazing initiative from the University of Highlands and Islands. So how can tech help that? Do they want help? I don't know, but it should be a place that amazing movements like that can come. But for, you know, but for every, you know, for any one thing to happen in a massive, and it's a non-exhaustive list of things I would like to see, and I would be emailing Joshua and Leslie and contributing what I would like to see, because if you don't say, I think in this world you don't get. So it's a big list, but for all of it for any of it to happen, everyone needs the support and get behind Traveltech Scotland. Joshua and Leslie simply cannot do this on their own. It's not possible. We can't just sit back and receive emails, which people may have done in the past about cool initiatives and not got behind it. Everyone needs to play a role. To do that, I think we need to be brave and put ourselves out there a bit more than we probably normally do. And I appreciate that a lot of people who are maybe involved in tech development are not comfortable or palatable putting themselves out and being brave. But I think to make it happen, we need to be brave. And if we want to join the ranks of the best, you know, we need to be involved and committed as people and companies. So that's my big list. So I apologise, it was quite a long list, but I think it's got so much potential. I think people should get in there with what they would really help them as, you know, business and people. In terms of news, we've been very lucky, and I feel a bit guilty to say that we've been working on 4 big new deployments over the past few months, which has, you know, kept us kind of going. I'm quite excited by Christmas. We'll have bought, audio is a big thing for us in our experiences, but we're bringing in video and AR, which I think has been strongly demanded by young people. So I think in looking at the model so far, it looks amazing. So I'm really excited about that. You know, and I think I'm convinced that, you know, like exploring these new technologies and working in partnership with new companies that we've just met over the past few months, you know, that's the future for us. It's a future of collaboration. So I think, you know, just to sort of finish, I think I'm delighted to, well, you know, I'm delighted this is happening, and I think we should all make the most of the opportunity. And I think that's all for me, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iain. We've got your list now, which is great. Thanks very much. Just and yeah, and you know, this is what we want to hear. It's fantastic to hear what you'd like to see from the community. And I really like, you know, the idea around being brave, that we need to be brave and committed and involved. And it's great to hear your news too. So thank you very much. So with, thank you to all three of our speakers, to Julie Grieve, Allan Nelson and Iain McNeill. And now we still have plenty of time for a Q&A. I'm just going to move to Josh just in case he wants to kick this off, and then please keep putting your questions into the chat box, and we'll try our best to get our speakers and for ourselves to answer them. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Yeah, I've seen there's a few questions already coming up, and also thanks so much for completing the mural. I know there's a lot of some good post-it notes. I just wanted to do a quick shout out because I know there's a lot of people on the call, and there's some great travel tech companies on there as well. So I see that 80 Days are on the call, Travel Nest, The List have been on here, GeoTourist, Vocalista, Walks and Waterfalls, Tourable Technologies, Golf Camels. So there's already hoping this is a good start to sort of building some of this community. Also Code Clan on the call. So thanks for joining, Melinda. I've always got to shout you out, I think, because you helped me get my brother-in-law off my sofa and into a tech job. So I'm very appreciative of that. So I'm going to make a start with some of the questions that have come through, and I've got a few of my own as well. So I'll start with what Gordon from ASVA has asked, I think a great question, which is, everyone on this call is travel tech or companies that are starting to use technology already. How do we get the tales and stories of good travel tech solutions out to some of those companies that aren't yet adopting? We know that especially the online bookable product has always been a really difficult thing to get everyone on board with. So I'm going to start with you, Julie, and then Alan, Iain, just jump in as and when.
So I'm obviously not and haven't run a visitor attraction, but I can tell you as someone who came into the hotel industry, what's blindingly obvious and missing is this technology that provides this needs to be easy to set up and affordable, and that means it needs to run at scale. So it's not without its challenges, but I do think that what's happening in our industry is that there's now a push from guests or visitors in this case, but also there's a push and an understanding that it's going to be necessary. My only sort of thing about all of this is that the hotel industry really fell into this because of the onset of the internet and gave away a lot of power to the online travel agents with, as this sort of sector grew online and really commoditized hotels. And I think that visitor attractions, I don't know the economics, but I hope that they learn from what happened in hotels. And I'm sure that there are products out there that can be brought to the forefront. And if not, then maybe this cluster can build one.
Mm-hmm. Alan, Iain, do you have anything to add on that one at all?
Yeah, I think it's a question of the vendors that are building the technology need to make the technology as simple to use as possible, which is a very easy thing to say, but it's actually a very, very difficult thing to do and get it right. So that user experience both for the administrator, for the hotelier and behind it, is as important in terms of take up as the experience for the guests themselves. So the hotelier has to be able to use the technology as well as the guests. I mean, hoteliers are used to using technology all the time because all of us use these things. So therefore, you're looking to deliver experience, along the line of some of the best apps in the world or most used apps in the world. So that's the way I would approach it. And I think, reading there's another question here about independent hotels and B&Bs. How are they changing their attitude towards becoming more tech oriented? And to be honest, I would give exactly the same answers to that one as well. You have to make it easy for them to use, because as I said earlier on, a lot of hoteliers are not particularly tech oriented. They know they need it. It's a necessary evil. And what Julie said about the OTAs was completely correct. For those of us of that vintage, you remember when the internet first emerged in the late 90s, which is me, nobody else, this is me, about how the OTAs arrived along and said, look, we can put your hotel on every screen in the world. And they all went, great, have my money. And unfortunately haven't really been able to get that genie back in the bottle ever since. Yeah,
I think that both answers are very, very useful. From a Traveltech for Scotland perspective, I could probably give some insight into the way we're thinking about matching travel tech companies with some of the tourism hospitality companies and their needs. So we've started already talking to Scottish Tourism Alliance and hopefully getting some very specific introductory events around the specific problems that are having right now, so that we can almost match some of the travel tech providers to the tourism companies. I think it's really hard for a lot of tourism companies, especially if they're small, independent, because you don't have a lot of time. Often you don't have a great deal of finances. And I'd be really interested to know how they can learn from each other as well in terms of how to adopt those technologies and potentially collaborate and things like that. So we've got some conversations as well with destination groups and how they can potentially adopt technologies almost at scale and then have sort of support groups who are in the same destination. So I think that's one potential way. I'm going to go to the next question, which has come from Ranald, which is, what challenges have a panel encountered when recruiting tech talent or using third-party agencies when you're scaling the business? So I might go to Iain first, just because I'm going to pick on you. So Iain, what are your thoughts in response to Ranald's question?
I think for me, it's quite a tricky question to answer, because I've worked in property tech for maybe 15, 20 years. So for a lot of our recruitment has been just people we've worked with in the past. So it's been very much like an organic thing. So we've not really had to sort of reach out beyond the pools of people that we know. So I think it's probably better for one of the other panel members who maybe recruit up bigger teams and to answer, if that's okay, George.
No problem. Julie, Allan, I know you've both been in the process of taking on more people as you've had to cater for increased demand. Julie, just starting with you, how have you found it overall, but especially in the last sort of few months?
Well, what I'll start with saying is it's easier the older you get. I don't mean me personally, I mean the business. So my experience of hiring technology, software engineers, is that they can be a bit risk averse, and so moving to a startup, it might be something they'd be concerned about, although I think most of them dream about Silicon Valley and it all being like that, and of course we all know it's not. I have hired 8 people since shutdown. We've onboarded everyone remotely. I've got some of Melinda's amazing code planners in, and I have to say, Melinda, the energy that they bring is fantastic. So I think for me it's about getting a blend. I do also do some outsourcing to a fantastic hospitality tech builder in Czech Republic, where we think it's something that we need to do, but we don't need it to be intrinsically, we don't need to build that knowledge in our team. So I think challenges is, it's not necessarily recruitment per se. It's just it's hard to find the right fit, whether you can meet them in person or over Zoom, and you can put as many, I'm quite old now, you can put as many tests and interviews and all sorts of things in place as you want, but ultimately I try hard now to recruit on attitudes and then see if we can get the training done afterwards. But you can't do that with a software engineer.
Yeah, Allan, have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, we certainly try to avoid using agencies, cost being the obvious reason. I would, obviously mentioning CodePlan in terms of what they're doing. We haven't hired from CodePlan yet, but I think they filled a very useful and interesting gap in the market. Yeah. We're hiring at the moment, so we've seen more activity. It's been easier to hire in some ways, even though what we're tending to find is we're getting a lot of applications through and having to sort out 90-95% of them because they're not particularly relevant. So there's a lot of people out there looking for jobs, but not necessarily the right ones. Yeah, and let's just get back to the question here. Remote working and location neutral. We found a little bit of the hiring we've done recently. We actually came down to 2 candidates for a developer role, and we actually went with the other one because we actually realized that actually this person was probably better suited to working remotely than working in an office. It kind of makes us think about, okay, well, if we hire graduates, how on earth are we going to support them properly and bring them into what used to be an office-based business and now suddenly isn't. And also I got asked in an interview recently, the first time I've ever been asked this, basically, where is the company going? What is your leadership style? and suddenly I got questioned by the developer in front of me to have to give that answer, which I thought was really interesting. It kind of goes back to Julie's point: the more established you are, the more reputation you have, probably the easier it is to answer that question. But secondly, it's probably easier to make the hire. But suffice to say, she got the job, and she's very good. So, but yeah, you just have to. I think with recruitment, you have to spend a lot of your time on it as a CEO, as a senior director, or whatever. Because if you don't, it's the most expensive mistake you can make. And the other final mistake is that if it's not working, don't hang around. Just deal with it and then move on to the next one.
Some fine advice there already. There's a couple of more questions. Probably got time for two more. I'm going to start with Benjamin's question, which I think is excellent, and it's asking about, we've reopened. There is a lot of problems associated with some of the over-tourism challenges, especially in the Highlands. We talked about wild camping before the call started and things like that. In what ways do you think the Traveltech community can try and fast-track solutions to diversification of the tourism product, reducing pressure on honeypots, things like that? Now, Iain, I am going to go to you again on this, because I know you've been thinking about trip planning and things like that. I don't expect you to solve this immediately, but what are your initial responses to how Traveltech can help reduce some of the problems with this over-tourism or sort of non-responsible tourism?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest areas that we've started to look at over probably the past 2 years. So I think the first step is understanding, where it's happening, what is the nature of it. We've started to look more into what's the barriers? Why do people keep going to the same places? Do they only know these places to go to? Why are you scared to leave the A9 and go down this, this little glen, down this little sort of half-broken road, and to get the most amazing experience of your life at a beautiful waterfall? A lot of people don't know what's off the beaten track, so in a lot of ways, through providing the services through offline, it's a little bit more costly, as people who work with maps know, to use offline, map tiles than it would do for online. So I think there is working out what people want. So if they're into the heritage, if they're into the nature side, showing them where these are off the beaten track, then giving them almost a technology to actually get there safely and find the beaten track again. So that was one of the big things from some research we did. People were confident they could maybe get there, but get back again onto the beaten track. So I think that the whole offline piece, I think it happens in cities as well, and it's actually to just almost broaden horizons of where you could have a great experience. So you can actually theme things up. You can understand your user more. I think in the kind of the travel planning piece, I think you want to surprise people. I think if you ask people what they want, they might say they want to go to the really busy thing. But if you actually give them suggestions and possibilities, I think we might actually start to break some of the behaviour patterns. So it's such an exciting area. I don't think we've got the answer. It's something that we want to really spend time understanding. I know lots of other people are. And if that's part of what, happens through the Traveltech cluster, we'll be delighted to be involved in these discussions and debates.
Thanks, Iain. And Gordon has rightly corrected me. I mean, over-tourism is not really back. There's definitely busyness and there's areas and there's problems. But of course, tourism is in the worst crisis in all of our memories. And
I was going to say, Josh, I think in certain places, what we've seen from the sort of data and the stats, some of the rural areas I've seen is getting it again this year. You're seeing it down in Wales and some of the places we're looking at deploying. So, it's happening about the place, but it's the cities I think are really suffering just now. So I think, it's they're the ones my heart goes out to just now for that reason. Yeah,
it's flipped. The whole dynamics have changed, and demand is kind of difficult to forecast at the moment. I'm going to probably end with one more question. There's already a lot of good questions coming through, and we'll keep all these, and hopefully we can try and get some thoughts on them. I've got one here from Janani, and she is asking, as early pioneers in Traveltech, and this is, I think, particularly focused on Allan, is there any specific advice for early stage entrepreneurs?
Sell your vision to whoever will listen and whoever will buy it. Find your early customers, your early adopters, and service the hell out of them, do a good job for them, do things. There's a great article that was done by Y Combinator in Silicon Valley a few years ago called "Do Things That Don't Scale," and it tells the story of Airbnb, how they went door knocking. Don't think you'll just build a technology platform and people will come running to it. We learned some very expensive lessons over the years about putting out what we thought was great marketing and nobody was interested. So if you're going to be the CEO, you have to go door knocking. And you have to be able to sell. It doesn't matter. It goes back to that point somebody made earlier on about, was it Iain made the point about being, as technology people, we're often not comfortable with going out and selling ourselves. If you believe in your vision, you absolutely have to go out and sell it. And then you have to get paying customers. Because if you don't have paying customers, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And that's what you need to do.
I think we're coming to 5 past. We want to finish before time to show the efficiency of the travel tech sector. There's some other great questions here talking about making sure that we engage with Visit Scotland. I know that we've spoken to and got a lot of support from Malcolm Ruffhead and Vicky Miller from Visit Scotland already, which has been great. Conversations around how we can have an international profile, especially around areas like the Global South, where the tourism industry has collapsed and had much less support than we've had. And I hope that in future events we can start to tackle and cover some of these. So Leslie, is there anything else that you want us to cover before we do the final sort of sign off?
No, I'm sorry we didn't manage to get through all the questions. I know that other people have been asking things, and we'll try and get you the answers to them and follow up with you. And we know that there are a lot of asks at the moment from the tourism sector for solutions from the travel tech sector and vice versa, getting in front of each other. And Josh and I are working on ways to do that, and with the rest of you. So I just want to thank everyone who's taken the time to get involved today. And yeah, we've got ways that we want you to get involved and that you can follow up with us. So thank you again. And Josh, if you want to go over those.
Yeah, of course. So I'm just going to share my slide again, just so that you can, perhaps unnecessarily. So what next? What we're hoping to do is, well, we've got a mailing list like anyone, but I think what we're trying to do is create a space that can replicate what we'd initially hoped this community would be, which would almost be face-to-face. We would hoping to have events, getting people meeting each other over nice snacks and maybe wine. That's not going to happen, at least not in the first year. So we're going to try and work with, hopefully a Scottish-based company or someone else to do a bit of a community platform, so it's space for us to interact. So once that's got started, we'd love you to join it. Start the conversation. Get in touch with me or Leslie or others on this call. Like we said, we've got Melinda from Code Clan here, which is great and a potential source of talent, but also a potential place for people who've had to be let go to retrain. So there's Geovation Scotland as well, who are a great accelerator, an incubator for geospatial technology companies. So that's a great opportunity as well. And like I said before, we're not going to do it all. This is about what the community can do. So join the community, first of all, start that conversation. We're going to host more events. We're going to start signposting and trying to support you by making things easy as possible, either innovation funding and other things like that. So the final thing, I think, is to really thank Leslie, who's done a huge amount of work getting this going, to thank Julie, Allan and Iain, who've both provided some great experience that they've had, but also have given us a starting direction for where we're going to go. The mural board is still open, so if you do have ideas for the end of the day, just post them in there. Any ideas that you have are welcome. Get in touch with me and Leslie. If you want to just have a conversation with us, we'll set up some time to have that conversation. We'll get a feedback form out for this event, but also we'll start getting the dates for future events. So thank you so much for your interest, for your ideas, and we look forward to speaking to you all again soon. So take care, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you from me.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
And keep in touch.
Guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Cheers.